Welcome to the channel for the future caretakers of resurrected species. Welcome to the Paleo-Zoo-Keepers Association.
Oh, hello there. Welcome to the Paleo-Zoo-Keeper Association. My name is Austin. Thylacoleo. It's definitely one of the most interesting predatory animals in the fossil record. Ever since I first heard about these animals, I've been so interested in them ever since I heard these animals when I was young. So, before we really get into the rest of the topic of the video, let's get into the topic species. The Thylacoleo carnifex, or the pouch lion, is a large mammalian predator native to Australia, said to have lived between 2 million to 40,000 years ago. The Thylacoleo was also a marsupial, basically a mammal that reared its young in a pouch, and the largest marsupial predator of Australia. Weighed between 223 to 287 pounds. This would make it around the size range of jaguars, where smaller individuals will be close to leopards in size, and the largest individuals will be closer to the size of lionesses and tigresses. Its habitat was primarily open, dry forest, but generally close to water holes, and as long as there's enough vegetation for cover, for it is an ambush predator. Although, despite being a predator, the Thylacoleo is in fact more closely related to the Diprotodont family of marsupials, which includes koalas and wombats, and including the extinct giant wombat Diprotodont. This close relation to the group of normally herbivorous marsupials, and with having herbivorous ancestors, is pretty much portrayed in its dentition. Instead of having the classic canines of carnivores, it has rodent-like incisor teeth, along with molars that are pretty much become adapted to become similar to carnassial or meat-cutting teeth. Despite their herbivorous ancestry and relations, the Thylacoleo works very well as a large predator, with their bite force being stronger than any modern cat, being able to kill large prey like the Diprotodont in less than a minute, whereas a lion would take 15 minutes to be able to kill similar-sized prey. And large, powerful forearms with semi-opposable thumbs and retractable claws would be able to help to bring the prey down in order to deliver the bite, and will also be able to help it climb trees as well. It is generally agreed by paleontologists that the Thylacoleo died out due to the destruction of its habitat done by fire stick farming practices of early Aborigines, which also wiped out the large prey animals that the pouch lion relied on for sustenance. As you can see, the Thylacoleo is a very fascinating animal. And as you probably saw in the title of the episode of this video here, I would definitely say that Thylacoleo would be a really good candidate for rewilding purposes to be able to be reintroduced back into the Australian outback. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of you are wondering, why? Why bring the Thylacoleo back and reintroduce it back to the wild? Well, because I believe the Thylacoleo can provide very good ecological services for some of Australia's invasive species problem. Anyone who lives in Australia or knows about Australia can definitely tell you that the continent as a whole is suffering from the ravages of invasive species ever since Europeans first arrived on this continent. One of these invasive species would be feral pigs that were introduced to the continent in 1788 by the First Fleet as semi-feral, free-roaming livestock. Locally known as brumbies, feral horses have also appeared in the outback around 1804 after being brought with the first fleet for agricultural and utility work. Also, donkeys were brought to Australia 1866 as pack animals for mining operations, but were released when cars and other such vehicles came about. The first record of feral donkeys in Australia was in the Kimberley region of Western Australia in the early 1930s. Another species of ungulate dromedary camels were brought to Australia in the 1840s to use as beasts of burden in Australia's dry climate. Just like the feral donkeys, the camels were released and became feral when vehicles replaced them. Now the continent boasts the largest, if not the only, population of wild dromedary camels in the world. Between 1825 and 1866, two Asian bovine species, the water buffalo and banteng, were introduced from Southeast Asia as livestock animals that could survive in the humid areas of northern Australia. Throughout the 19th century, 6 different species of deer were introduced to the outback for hunting purposes. Although some were descended from escapees from venison farms, the species of deer that were introduced to Australia was the red deer, who's native to Europe, the fallow deer that was native to the Mediterranean region of Europe and Asia Minor, the chital or axis deer that was native to India, the rusa deer that is native to the Indonesian islands of Java, Bali, and Timor, the little hog deer that is native to South Asia, including India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar, and finally, the sambar deer that is native to the Indian subcontinent, South China, and Southeast Asia. In the late 1700s, after they were brought with the first fleet as livestock, feral goats and cattle, also known as scrub bulls, have been found to thrive in the outback. There are more invasive species that plague the continent, but these particular animals are important for this video subject. As one would probably guess, having these non-native animals into the ecosystem would definitely have negative effects, such as overgrazing, competition with wildlife, soil erosion, and diseases are just to name a few that these species can cause. But there are some who argue that having these animals here would actually be a benefit for the environment, under the right management, of course, such as the grazing of the several herbivore species like donkeys and cattle could help limit the amount of fuel for wildfires. Some ecologists would even say that many of these animals can be used as ecological proxies for the extinct megafauna herbivores like diprotodonts that the Thylacoleo used to hunt. Also, many culling operations meant to control or eradicate these invasive species have been challenged for a few reasons. One of which is that when feral donkeys were killed off in the Kimberley region, the amount of wildfires increased since these animals would feast on woody plants that cattle avoid. Some invasive species, such as feral goats and water buffaloes, have become important for the economy for station owners and Aboriginal communities. Some of them, primarily the brumbies, have a significant cultural importance to the history of Australia and are well loved by many as well. With all this in mind, I would definitely imagine that if we were able to resurrect them, the Thylacoleo could be a great predator to be used as basically a tool to both control the populations of these invasive species and even control their behaviors. Studies on apex predators' effects on the ecology, including but not limited to wolves in Yellowstone, have shown that apex predators not only control the populations of their prey by hunting and eating them, but also that their hunting activities will control their behavior. A good example of this is, as mentioned earlier, the wolves in Yellowstone. When the wolves were absent in Yellowstone, elk overgrazed the riparian areas, basically their areas close to the water, which caused increased soil erosion and mucked up the rivers. With wolves being reintroduced, and with them hunting by bodies of water quite often, This limited the elk's grazing activities in these riparian areas. This allowed plants to grow back in these areas, which immensely decreased the soil erosion. This also made lakes and rivers and streams have crystal clear water, which is beneficial for fish and even beavers. While predatory animals were not used in this one, another good example is the Kachana Station in the Kimberley region of Australia have manage their feral donkeys' behavior by having only riparian areas be the quote unquote kill zones, and everywhere else would be safe zones, except during really harsh droughts. And this has reflected the same effects as having predators in the environment would. Now, I'm pretty certain many of you would ask, why the Thylacoleo? Well, I would say for one thing, it's a predator that was once native to the Australian continent, or at least more native to that environment than, like, say, Smilodon would. But there's also another reason why I definitely go for Thylacoleo in particular. Research has shown that the Thylacoleo is a very specialized predator. How specialized? Well, according to studies done on its physiology and its bite, the Thylacoleo is specialized in only hunting significantly large prey animals, especially like from back then, like from browsing kangaroos to the giant diprotodont. The invasive species that are mentioned earlier are fall within the size range of the pouch lion's prey range. The specialization is important, not just so they will actually hunt the invasive megafauna, but it will be extremely unlikely to go after smaller native species, many of which are critically endangered. Also, taking notes of the success of introducing specialists to Australia, such as dung beetles and cactus moths, specialized animals have shown to be one of the best biological trolls for pests. And I think we can all agree we're going to love to avoid introduction failures like what happened with the cane toads in Australia. Now, with all that in mind, now that we got a reason of why we should resurrect the Thylacoleo, now we just need to work on actually resurrecting the animal itself. Unfortunately, even though we have discovered many fossils since its discovery in the 1830s, we have yet to find any fossils that have any genetic material of the marsupial that we can use for resurrection. However, if we were to find that genetic material, probably from a dry, cool cave in the mountains of Australia or Tasmania, their range did extend there after all, it is unlikely that it will be a genome complete to be able to clone one. So, much like what's being done for its fellow marsupial carnivore, the thylacine, we will need to use the genome of Thylacoleo's closest living relative as a basis and modify it immensely with Thylacoleo DNA. While we don't have genetic material to say which modern marsupial is the pouched lion's closest living relative, we have skeletal evidence to show us that wombats and koalas were the animal's closest living relatives, and we have plenty of those that we can use. Once we have the genome ready, preferably with multiple variables of the same genome so we can have a diverse gene pool, we will need to have that genome inserted stem cells from either a wombat or a koala so that they could either become embryos or gametes like sperm and eggs to make embryos. And once we have the embryos, Palaeoecological embryos ready, we will then need to be able to get them into the uterus of a closely related relative. And thankfully, thanks to Colossal Biosciences, we actually are able to have assisted reproductive technology, or ART, to be able to do this. So, good on them. Due to the unique reproductive physiology of marsupials, the length of the pregnancy would be pretty short, from a few weeks to around a month. And when the joey is born, it is around the size of a jelly bean and will instinctively head towards the pouch, where it will attach to the teat, where it will nurse and develop further until the joey gets to a certain age and starts to explore outside the pouch. When the Thylacoleo is born, it'll definitely be wise to have it transferred to the pouch of a different animal other than the mother that gave birth to it. That's because that we don't know how big the Thylacoleo cup would be by the time it starts getting out of the pouch. Considering that we know that the adult Thylacoleo is immensely bigger than a wombat or a koala, it'll definitely be a good idea. But where do we transfer the Thylacoleo joey when it's born? One option would be that we could use kangaroos, like the reds and gray kangaroos, as pouch surrogates for Thylacoleos. Transferring joeys from tree kangaroos to the pouches of wallabies has been done successfully, so there is this possibility. However, the problem with this is that, as far as I could be able to find, no one's been able to successfully transfer the joey of a carnivorous animal into the pouch of a herbivorous animal. So with that, we have no idea what kind of situation or consequences of that action. So probably wouldn't be a good idea. But there is another possibility that we could use. Now, mind you, in order to have this second idea come about, we will need to have another predatory marsupial to be resurrected first before we use them. That other solution would be to use the thylacine or Tasmanian tigers as surrogate pouch mothers. Since they are carnivorous and close to the same size as a Thylacoleo, they could be an appropriate size pouch surrogate mother to be able to be used. However, while this could be a good idea, as far as I know, no one's been able to do that kind of transfer from one marsupial to another. So you got to remember that the Thylacoleo is more closely related to koalas and wombats than they are to the Tasmanian tiger, who is more closely related to the Dasyurids, which includes Tasmanian devils, the Dunnart, and the numbat, while they were marsupials, they're still a very different marsupial. So there could be some unforeseen consequences and such there. So I would definitely keep this an option, but this needs some more research. Another option that we can use is developing a type of artificial pouch. This has been done for orphaned and rescued joeys in research clinics all over Australia and Tasmania. Now, as far as I know, however, there hasn't been one for any joeys that are just born. If there is, definitely let me know. But I would definitely say that we would need to develop these types of pouches more so if we are to be able to do this for not just for the Thylacoleo joeys, but for any newborn marsupial that is out there. With either way how you do it, you need to be able to properly rear your Thylacoleo joeys, your first generation of them, up to maturity, so that you could be able to start breeding them in captivity, and even use the females as surrogates for any new newly created Thylacoleo embryos so that you could be able to increase the gene pool of of the Thylacoleos. But this you probably need to wait a little bit for this one there's because you're definitely gonna because you're definitely gonna go through a lot of bumps in the road, unforeseen curveballs and such when raising and growing these marsupials. There's gonna be so much unknowns about this marsupial that will come and pop up. And once you're able to get some understanding of how to rear up the joeys, you're also going to need to make sure you breed a large population of them because you'll need a population that is large enough, like at least over 100 or so, and have an immense amount of genetic diversity, so that whenever you start releasing the thylacoleos, they will both you have enough populations, and so that you don't need to have like a 50% drop of the population if the thylacoleos you're reintroducing to the wild have died or failed, and with a genetic and with having a diverse gene pool, it would definitely give the thylacoleos a better chance to be able to survive in the wild. And also, you definitely want to make certain you prevent inbreeding. And obviously, anyone can tell you that's definitely something you wish to avoid. As you resurrect and breed more thylacoleos into existence, definitely be aware that it's going to be a long curving experience and curveballs that will be coming your way. Or with resurrecting any extinct species, there's always going to be some things that are unforeseen or understood, whether you're looking at the fossils or even looking at living relatives. So, while this will be curveballs, this will also be good opportunities for you to learn more about them, especially information that could ever be useful when coexisting with these marsupials in the wild, whenever they do get reintroduced back to the wild. Now, once you both have a large population of thylacoleos in captivity and they have a good genetic diversity, you'll be able to start plans and getting resources so that you can be able to start rewilding thylacoleos. And mind you, this is going to be a long, long process, and will not be an easy one. I promise you that. When choosing individual thylacoleos for the rewilding process, they must be most likely be be able be young, so that because a younger animal could be able to learn how to become wild much more easier than an older animal, and also be best that they show a bit of an independent streak so that they will not become reliant on people. And make sure that they are also genetically compatible to each other so that when they're in the wild, they can be able to establish a strong wild gene pool. Along with choosing the individual animals for this project, you also want to make certain that the rewilding facilities you're going to have are proper as well. And there are multiple factors into this, but there are at least three factors that are needed. One is to make certain that they are isolated, like basically they are far away from towns and most human settlements, so that way that the Thylacoleos don't get too comfortable with humans. And it'd be a big idea to have it close to the public, have the facilities close to the public, only have staff and scientists come about, come about, be allowed to be in the facilities. I mean, you could bring some news reporters in here every now and then, but keep it minimal because you don't want the Thylacoleos to be too comfortable with people. And another would be that make sure it's a natural environment filled with like forest, rocks, basically all the natural environment that the Thylacoleos are going to be living in and dealing with for the rest of their lives. And also make certain that they are big. Like, make sure that the enclosures are huge so that the Thylacoleos can be able to roam around, be able to practice their roaming behavior, and also they don't develop stereotypical behaviors, which would be detrimental for the rewilding process. Once you got these facilities all properly set up and have the Thylacoleos in these large natural habitats and environments that are fenced in, of course, then you will be able to need to have the Thylacoleo start learning how to hunt. According to scientists, the Thylacoleo is believed to be an ambush specialist, either jumping out of the trees like a leopard or jumping out of the bush in short bursts of speed so they could be able to catch their prey. Now, while we do not know what the speed of the Thylacoleo is, since studies on its walking and running behavior has not been done as far as I know, we can theorize that it could either A, be immensely fast in short bursts like in speed similar to that of cougars or mountain lions, which is actually between 40 to 50 miles per hour, or due to their flat feet could be a little bit slower but still immensely fast, probably is in speeds akin to the American black bear, which runs at speeds of around 35 miles per hour. While there's a vast speed difference, both are still pretty fast to be able to catch prey when necessary. So definitely take this to mind when setting up teaching and learning programs to be able to help these joeys learn how to hunt. To get them interested in hunting, it would be a good idea to be able to start by giving them carcasses of the prey animals that we want them to start hunting. From like carcasses of like feral pigs and other invasives, to even using carcasses of the native animals we want them to hunt as well, like kangaroos and emus. And one of the fun ways we can do this is by not only using the carcasses as a means to feed them, but also as forms of enrichment. Like basically, we can put them up trees so that they can be able to climb up the tree and get at the carcasses. Put the carcasses underneath the logs or rocks and sticks so that they will actually have to sniff it out and dig it out, or simply drag a carcass across a large area and have the Thylacoleo eventually follow the scent of the carcass so they can be able to use their sense to smell to find food. Another way that we can be able to do this is basically like, for example, have the carcass of a prey animal, whether it's a camel or a feral pig, a kangaroo, and such, hidden in somewhere in the enclosure. Only with this time, add in something that would come from the animal, the individual animal, or the same species, like camel's hair, kangaroo droppings, or pig urine, horse urine, whatever. Use that and sprinkle it or have it in the enclosure. So that way, when a Thylacoleo comes across it and smells it, they could be able to actually prowl around the large enclosure so they could be able to try to find that carcass, or at least where that scent originated from, trigger their hunting instincts and stalking behavior. And then once they found that carcass, they will associate finding like that hair or scent. They will associate that with finding a prey animal. When the Thylacoleos are doing pretty well on foraging and tracking down carcasses for them to scavenge on, then it'll be a good time to start gradually introducing them to live prey. Now, how we do this is that you would first need to introduce the living prey you need to introduce to the Thylacoleos is basically prey animals that are that can be very easy for them to take down, whether it's like a piglet or a polled or hornless goat, for example. Now, this is, and make sure it's done in a contained environment that does have some elements of its natural environment. This is so that the Thylacoleo can be able to learn how to hunt and not get hurt. Because especially since there are prey animals like water buffalo and camels and fully grown wild pigs, that would be very dangerous to an inexperienced Thylacoleo. Could seriously hurt them or even kill them. So definitely keep this in mind.
As they hunt these easy animals, gradually make the hunts more challenging and make them able to hunt in their larger enclosures. As you train these animals, make certain that the animals you use are basically the animals you want them to associate as food. From the invasive species like the pigs and buffalo to the native animals like the kangaroos and emus.
While we are rewilding the Thylacoleos and training them to hunt, one thing that we must take consideration is the possibility of Thylacoleos hunting human beings. Now, while I personally think that Thylacoleos hunting humans and back in the Ice Age was probably pretty rare, and they probably attacked mostly when they're defense or out of desperation, the possibility is still there, especially for resurrected species. So, we definitely need to make certain that the Thylacoleo would not associate humans with food. Oh, sorry. Anyway, joking as I did aside, this is a very serious thing because this is one of the things that many people would fear when it's involving prehistoric predators being resurrected and reintroduced. So we need to be able to decrease the chances of Thylacoleos seeing humans as food. Now, making certain that they could be able to not rely on humans for food is definitely one step, and having them isolated helps them not be very comfortable around humans. But sometimes, there's still a possibility that a rogue could be able to still come out of that. But there is one theoretical possibility, at least my own theoretical possibility, that we can use that could be able to train and condition the Thylacoleo to avoid humans, and probably will not get a rogue Thylacoleo going after humans for generations. Now, mind you, this idea could be pretty controversial, but but when done properly, it could be able to work very effectively. Now, my idea of how to train Thylacoleo to avoid humans and definitely not see them as prey is to basically use an electric shock collar. But wait. I know what you guys are thinking. Shock collar? Austin, that's inhumane. Now, when they're done very wrongly, they can be, and I've seen it happen. But shock collars can also, when done in the right hands and done properly, they can be very great for training a predatory animal to not attack certain something. Even the famous Dr. Grandin, even she mentioned that while she hates them, and they can be abused, they can be done to help train animals against their predatory instincts, like stopping a dog, chasing off cars, and things like that. And imagine that the Thylacoleo, to have them not go after humans, would be a good thing to do. Now, you can't just do it all nilly-willy. There has to be a process to doing this. And here's the process I propose for this kind of scenario. Now, this is how the idea would work. First, you gotta make certain that you do this while in the rewilding session. Make certain that it's done in a huge area, probably as big as an American football field, if not bigger. This will give Thylacoleo plenty of room. Why, I'll tell you later. And then, make certain that the shock collar is on the Thylacoleo. and make certain that the controls of the shock collars is in the hands of a professional animal behaviorist. That way they'll know when to do it and also not abuse it. Then you will get your human subject into that enclosure, and as the human walks around, minds his own business, well, seemingly so. Anytime the Thylacoleo shows any kind of predatory behavior towards the human, give it a zap. Or at least have the animal behaviorist give it a zap. And the big area is important so that whenever the Thylacoleo is trying to get away from the human, it could be able to do so. And then, after the session is over, make certain that the Thylacoleo is rewarded with a carcass. Basically, a way to reinforce this human avoidance behavior. Another use for shock collars to train the Thylacoleos is that, well, Australia is known for having very dangerous reptiles, especially very venomous species like the western taipan or spear snake, to the saltwater crocodile, the world's largest crocodile species. The uses of a shock collar could be able to help teach these animals that to not mess with these reptiles. Another technique to teach Thylacoleos to avoid humans is not just simply of them not hunting humans, but also to learn that humans also have projectile weapons. So, using rubber bullets in a situation very similar to what I mentioned earlier with the shock collar training would probably be a good idea to use to teach Thylacoleos to avoid humans, not just in not hunting them, but also avoid them since they have projectile weapons. Now I know, guys, I know. Like, Austin, this would be too cruel to the animals. Believe me, a lot of times I would agree. I mean, I honestly felt horrible thinking this idea. But if we want these animals to be able to survive in the wild, and not only survive, but thrive and be able to coexist, there are some tough lessons they're going to need to learn. Like, they got to learn to not see humans as food. We just got to make sure they don't. And a little bit on them to learn not to get taken on by reptiles like snakes and crocodiles. We definitely need to do that. But that's why if we do resurrect them and we have to use those techniques, we have to make sure they're handled by professionals. Basically like professional animal behaviorists, and basically those who are disciplined enough that they will not abuse it. And if the animals learned from these experiences and could be able to stay away from humans and from the dangers without even having to shock them or anything like that, this will be one of the graduation points and one of the they pass points to make certain that we know that they could be able to be in the wild okay and not cause trouble, or at least get into trouble. So, as much as I don't like the idea of shocking or rubber bullying Thylacoleo, this will need to be done sparingly so that they could be able to learn how to avoid those troubles in the wild. Now, I know that some of those who are on board with this idea will probably say, the next thing you'll say is like, why don't we use this to have them avoid livestock too? Well, that's mostly, maybe partially yes, but mostly no kind of question. Mostly because while we could do them with the sheep, but I'll get on to that later, we cannot be able to really do that on other livestock species like cattle, horses, and stuff like that, primarily because, well, a lot of these feral animals are the ones that we want the Thylacoleo to hunt and consume. On those types of livestock, we'll have to use other motives to be able to prevent or limit the amount of attacks on these types of livestock. On sheep, however, well, we could probably do that, but we probably don't need to. We could probably most likely use a technique that's been done for the tiger quolls and cane toads, and that is that take some lamb or mutton, make sure it still has its scent and such. Hook in an enzyme or toxin that's not lethal, but would definitely make the Thylacoleo sick or feel sick, and give it to them, and then eventually they will associate the smell and taste of sheep with that nasty smell. And that would perhaps be a good way to train the Thylacoleos to not attack sheep. Now, you could definitely see, wow, we could definitely use this for sheep, but one of the reasons why I would be more on board with using shock collars with Thylacoleo, since, in order to make that the sheep idea work, you gotta do the same thing with human flesh, and I don't think I need to tell you just how unethical and illegal that sort of activity is. So, in the case of hunting humans, teaching them to not hunt humans, we'll definitely stick with the shock collars on this one. But for the sheep, that will be the more easier one. But also, a tad bit back to the shock collar and rubber bullets. When you're doing these types of training, better take this into consideration of safety, as in make certain that the training does not endanger the staff or the animals, and the animals. There's ethical considerations, like it is crucial to ensure that the training is necessary for conservation purposes and does not negatively impact the animal's welfare, and have expertise. Like mentioned earlier, training large predators is not a task for amateurs and should only be done by experienced wildlife professionals with a deep understanding of predator behavior and animal behavior in general. For any mismanagement of this would definitely hinder the rewilding process. Now once you were able to get to your Thylacoleos rewild, whether you are able to do it in a large fenced-in area in Australia, or even in a different country like in South Africa, where they're very good in wildlife conservation, and where they're rewilding the South China tiger. Anyway, either way, once you get that, you're going to need to learn to be able to find where to release these animals to. You got to make certain that this it's a big area to be able to support a Thylacoleo, especially a big predator. B, it's also got to make sure there's a lot of adequate habitats there, like forest, shrubs, anywhere where the Thylacoleo can hide and be able to ambush from. And also 3, ironically, you'll need to have at least 3 of the large invasive species animals so that Thylacoleo can be able to sustain itself. So in the case if something happens to one of the animals, the other 2 can be able to help support the animal. And I found a few areas in Australia where they could probably be good places to reintroduce Thylacoleo to. All right, first location in Australia would be, I'm not gonna try to pronounce it because I think I might butcher the name. So I'm just gonna put it as text down below here in the screen. But anyway, located in the Northern Territory, this national park has a large variety of habitats such as sandy beaches, mangroves, rainforests, patches, and swamps. A good amount of these habitats could definitely fit the Thylacoleo's hunting strategy. And this national park has a large amount of feral cattle and water buffalo, along with feral pigs that roam the area. And this national park is also where the vast majority of the Australian continent's introduced banteng are located at. So there's plenty of prey for the Thylacoleo here. The next location is the Kakadu National Park, also located in the Northern Territory. Let's just simply say the Northern Territory, also known as the Top End, would definitely be a popular place for Thylacoleo. Anyway, its habitats mostly include floodplains, wetlands, coastal areas, and savanna woodlands, several of which are adequate for the Thylacoleo. Along with the usual smaller invasive species like cats and cane toads, this park is also home to water buffalo, brumbies, donkeys, and feral pigs. So definitely make a good sizable menu for the Thylacoleo. Next one would be the Alpine National Park that's located in Victoria. Now, I know this one might be a tad of a stretch since it's a bit colder than the other areas, but if the Thylacoleo could be able to do alright in the cold, this will be a good place. Especially that while it is mostly open, there are forested waterways and other alpine habitats that could work well for the Thylacoleo. And the park is known for having large populations of brumbies, along with feral pigs, goats, and even has all 6 species of deer present on the national park's forest. So this will definitely work. And the last, but certainly not least, would be the Kimberley area, which is located in the northern part of Western Australia. The habitats in this area is primarily tropical savanna, characterized by open woodlands and interspersed with areas of sandstone gorges, mangrove-lined coasts, and pockets of rainforest, particularly in the steeper cliff faces in the gorges. With all this would definitely provide a diverse habitat that Thylacoleo can definitely work with. And this area is also well known for having a large population of feral donkeys, and also being the only part of Western Australia where there are water buffalo there, and also a large amount of feral pigs, feral cattle, brumbies, and even camels roam here too. So, spoiled for choice for the Thylacoleo. Once you have chosen the location or locations, best to make a sort of acclimatization enclosure or hackout facility in the release areas so that has the right habitat, it's large enough, and has prey within it, or probably even release or place prey in it when it's needed, so that the Thylacoleo can become more accustomed to the area. And once the animal is acclimatized after a period of weeks or months, place a radio or GPS collar on the animal so that the scientists can be able to track the marsupial's movements as it roams in the wild. Now, for those who are still a little bit about the shot collar thing, obviously the shot collars are only for the teaching sessions. They will not be with them when they get released into the wild. If they pass the not attacking humans and such test, then they're free to go and free from the collars. So no worries on that. Only radio or GPS collars on the Thylacoleo. And once all that is done, open the gates of the enclosure so that the marsupial could get out on its own term. It would be cautious at first, but then it will eventually become more confident and will start exploring. Now, as the Thylacoleo roams its new habitat, scientists and park rangers are going to need to keep an eye on it to both study its behavior and make certain that it doesn't get any trouble, like human trouble or anything of that nature. And also, scientists want to make certain that Thylacoleo is actually hunting the invasive species that it's meant to hunt. Now, even though we would train it and such to go after invasive species, each one would bring their own pros and cons for the Thylacoleo. So, let's look at each individual invasive animal that would be a potential prey for Thylacoleo and see the pros and cons of each one of them. On feral goats, I think that the goats would probably be on the probably the smallest type of prey that the Thylacoleo would hunt, and this is perhaps the smallest they would go after. Goats are often found in semi-arid and rocky areas. Some of these areas would definitely be suitable for Thylacoleo as long as there's enough cover for the marsupial to be able to stalk them. Thylacoleo has been shown to have pretty good climbing skills, so the marsupials could be able to climb up rocky areas to hunt the goats. Uh, Goats would also graze on the grassland at times, where the Thylacoleo probably wouldn't be able to sneak up on them, so this is something to consider. And the goat's nimbleness would be able to make it a challenge for the marsupial lion to be able to catch a goat. So, while definitely not easy, it's pretty much could be a meal for them. Feral pigs are well within the prey range for the Thylacoleo, especially since the pigs are around the same size as the extinct sheep-sized wombat called Ramsaya. I'll put the text up here so you can check out yourself. And the feral pig is found in 40% of the continent, occurring in many habitats, several of which that are definitely agreeable to the pouched lion. The reproductive rate of the hog, three between 3 and 18 piglets every 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days. I know that's like a farmer analogy, but that's a really accurate one. Ensures that there will be plenty of prey for the marsupial. One of the challenges is that pigs are skittish, aggressive, and smart. Smarter than even dogs. So the marsupial would definitely need to work around that. Feral pigs are also known to be scavengers when carcasses are available. So a feral pig can be both prey and competitors to the marsupial. Another unique challenge for the Thylacoleo is that feral pigs are carriers of diseases and parasites, several of which are passable to the Thylacoleo's relatives and possibly Thylacoleo itself. These diseases and parasites include, but are not limited to, pseudorabies, toxoplasmosis, brucellosis, and several others. So these will definitely something to be considered. But other than that, pigs can definitely be a very good prey item for the Thylacoleo. Now the next invasive species would be the 6 species of deer. Now, mind you, while we all have a general idea of deer and these 6 species of deer are pretty similar, they're very different in their own way, and they will present different challenges for the Thylacoleo. The sambar deer, the largest of the introduced deer of Australia, weigh between 220 to 770 pounds, even over 1,000 pounds at times. Definitely is a good prey size option for the real life drop bear. And since these animals prefer to live in heavily forested uplands, which is a very good territory for the marsupial, but they do live solitary, which makes them immensely skittish. The smallest of the introduced deer, the hog deer, is somewhat within the size range for the marsupial predator, and the hog deer is often found in coastal swamp areas, so it might work out for the marsupial. The second largest deer introduced to Australia, the red deer, weighs between 120 to 220 pounds, but occasionally will go up to 440 pounds, making it a nicely sized prey animal for the Thylacoleo. During the rutting season, red deer are very vocal, so it'll make tracking them easy for the marsupial during the breeding season. And red deer do often live in herds, so there's extra surveillance to watch out for. And while they are definitely are found in mountainous forest areas, they also are often found in pasture land. So the best and worst of both worlds. Philo deer are the most common deer species in Australia and are well within the size range as prey items go, between 88 to 200 pounds. They're very social and often graze in open grassy areas, all of which are challenging for the marsupial. But they do often like to graze close to the forest areas and would even run to the forest for protection, which the marsupial lion could definitely work with. While within the size range as prey, between 132 to 187 pounds, the chital deer is very social, so that would definitely be a challenge. They prefer to be in warmer areas where there's plenty of grass, canopy, and cover, which would probably be able to help the real life drop bear to hunt them. Last and certainly not least, the Ruska deer is a close relative of the sandbar deer, close enough for them to crossbreed with each other, and they're similarly as large as they are, between 198 to 297 pounds, making them a very good-sized prey for the Thylacoleo. Living in thickly vegetative swampy areas, the deer's choice of habitat can work pretty well for the marsupial. While it is more social than the sandbar deer, they live in much smaller herds than the other species, than the other social species of deer, like about like 5 individuals or so. So it could work out in the pouch lion's favor. While each species is different, there is one challenge that all deer species would give out that would definitely be a unique challenge for the Thylacoleo are antlers. As far as we know, the Thylacoleo have never faced any animal in its natural history that has antlers. So, especially doing when they have the antlers and they can use them to defend themselves, Thylacoleo can definitely have to watch out when hunting deer like this. And also, on a side note, I definitely think deer, along with feral pigs, would definitely be one of the best sources of prey for the Thylacoleo. Much like because that isotopic analysis have been done on the Thylacoleo and shows that, at least with the samples they found, Thylacoleo love going after animals that live in tightly forested areas, vegetative areas, which deer often like to go to. And the species that was around back then that lived in similar environments was the long-faced kangaroo, basically a giant form kangaroo that primarily browses and lives in a thick forest. Not to be mistaken for the short-faced kangaroos of the Ice Age. So I can definitely imagine that in this sort of scenario, deer would definitely be a great prey source for Dr. Leo. With an average weight of around 440 pounds, feral donkeys are well within the appropriate prey range for the Thylacoleo. While they often go after more open areas, they do hang out in scrublands and rocky areas, so this can work out for the Thylacoleo. And even if they're adapted to the desert, donkeys would still need to go drink water, and any watering hole that has a significant amount of vegetation at it would definitely be good for the marsupial lion. Also, since donkeys can smell water underground 6 feet under and can even dig it out, basically making it a new watering hole, this would benefit the Thylacoleo in turn in an arid area as well. Even though that feral cattle, water buffalo, and banting have the differences, I'll put them in the same category since they do bring up very similar challenges and such for the Thylacoleo. With these bovines weighing hundreds of pounds to even 1,000 pounds or so, they are more than big enough for the Thylacoleo to be adequate prey. While they do graze in grasslands, the bovines don't stray far from water, especially both the bantain and the water buffalo, and would even browse on shrubs, bushes, and small trees during the dry season. This will make them still come within the Thylacoleo's preferred hunting areas. While their large size makes them adequate prey for the pouched lions, their large size would still make them pretty dangerous to hunt. These marsupials would probably most likely go after young, sick, injured, or old individuals more often. But only more often, not 100% of the time. Their horns will present a type of weapon that the Thylacoleo never faced before, so it'll be a bit of a challenge for them. Also, with them living in social groups, it would mean that the marsupials would have to be extra careful in not being spotted. Weighing between 1,329 to 1,980 pounds, the Brumbies, or Australian feral horses, are well within the range of being Thylacoleo's prey. While they do prefer open areas, they would still go into watering holes to quench their thirst, and even go through forests and brush to be able to get to better pastures. Along with their speed, their strong legs can also deliver powerful kicks that could injure or kill a pouched lion if the marsupial is not careful. Their herding instinct would also make them a tad difficult to sneak up on. Weighing in between 880 to 1,500 pounds, the feral dromedary camels would definitely be amongst the largest prey animals that the Thylacoleo would hunt in the Australian outback, along with the bovines and the brumbies. While these camels are generally found in open arid areas, they are primarily browsers, so they would go to shrublands and dry forests where the marsupial could hunt them. With them being big animals and can be aggressive when cornered, the Thylacoleo would need to be careful in hunting them. With camels having great endurance, the Thylacoleo would need to hit the camel hard and fast before it could get away. While camels would need to drink water, they could last for days or weeks without water, and since they could travel long distances to find some more water, that would mean that the Thylacoleo would need to be patient with this invasive beast. And with the camels being pretty tall themselves, Thylacoleo would either need to ambush them from a tree or would be able to jump up pretty fast and high before the camel decides to crush it. Along with the non-native invasive animals, we also got to consider Thylacoleo's effects on on the native wildlife. While for the marsupials, for example, most of the marsupials in Australia are pretty small, probably too small for Thylacoleo to care about. But there are some, including non-mammals, that would have interesting interactions with Thylacoleo. Let's see which ones and what. The largest living marsupials that are roaming Australia today would be part of the macropods, basically including kangaroos and wallabies. Both the red and gray kangaroos, the reds being the larger of the two, would be good occasional prey items for the Thylacoleo, as long as they could be able to surprise them and catch them unaware. Wallaroos and large wallabies would be considered more like snacks in comparison and might not be as hunted that often as compared to the larger macropods. While small, wombats would weigh between 44 and 88 pounds, would still make a decent meal for a Thylacoleo. Their digging habits would help them be able to get away from the marsupial lion. With the northern hairy-nosed wombat being critically endangered, the possibility of the Thylacoleo hunting them is there and would need to be taken into consideration. While I severely doubt that possums would make a significant portion of the marsupial lion's diet, I could imagine that some young Thylacoleos would probably take a brush-tailed opossum at times, but for the most part, not really that significantly so. Being large birds, emus would be considered as a large prey for a Thylacoleo, but with emus being pretty fast and have great endurance, the marsupial predator would have to be able to catch it unaware if it's able to make a meal out of it. With both the cassowary and the Thylacoleo preferring forested areas, it would definitely be inevitable for them to be able to come face to face with each other. While the Thylacoleo could hunt the cassowary, the bird in turn would viciously attack the marsupial in defense, although a nesting male would be vulnerable.
As well as interactions between the pouched lion and prey, the interactions between the marsupial lion and living predators would also be immensely fascinating as well. As well as interactions between the pouched lion and prey, the interactions between the marsupial lion and living predators would also be immensely fascinating as well. With watering holes being a favorite spot for Thylacoleo to hunt, there will be times when the marsupial will be in conflict with the saltwater crocodile. The pouched lion would need to be careful when drinking water in croc territory, or it would become the meal. Crocodiles and the real-life drop bear would compete for prey, especially with feral pigs and water buffalo. While rare, there is a possibility that Thylacoleo could turn the tides and hunt a young crocodile, or its smaller relative, the freshwater crocodile or freshie. The Tasmanian devils. These infamous marsupials are currently being reintroduced to the Australian mainland. So what would eventually happen is that both marsupials would meet again after thousands of years. While young Thylacoleos might hunt the devils, the biggest interaction both marsupials would have is that the devils would scavenge off of the marsupial lion's kills, and or the Thylacoleo would steal a carcass from the devils.
Interaction with the dingoes, between the dingoes and the Thylacoleo, would definitely be an interesting scenario.
On one hand, the Thylacoleo could affect dingo populations, like how tigers would affect wolf populations in India, by competing against them and hunting large prey, and therefore might even decrease the dingo population in their territories. On the other hand, packs of dingoes could compete with the large marsupial by swarming it off of its kill, much like how lions and hyenas would do to each other's kills. This would either encourage them to take their food to a secure location, like up a tree or in a cave, or eat fast before the dogs come about, like the cheetah in African savannas do to avoid conflict with the larger predators.
It actually turns out that, according to what we were able to discover in the fossil records, Thylacoleo would actually mostly feed from opening the rib cage and primarily eating fast on the vital organs. Very similar to cheetahs, and even similar to the thylacine or Tasmanian tiger, according to historical records on that species of marsupial. So, definitely interesting. While there won't be much direct interactions between the Thylacoleo and the red foxes, while mostly opportunistically going after small prey, they would occasionally go after carcasses if the opportunity presents itself. So, while the dingoes and other animals would definitely prevent the red fox from doing so, I can imagine that there would be times when a red fox would be opportunistic on a Thylacoleo kill. One interaction that the general public would definitely be interested and even mostly concerned about is on Thylacoleo's hunting livestock. Now, while we would especially like sheep and cattle. Now, while we would definitely work our best to try to help have Thylacoleos avoid human settlements, and probably in the case of sheep, be able to avoid sheep. But there will be times as generations go down and when resources are low, such as like a drought or something that would definitely force them to go after domesticated animals, that would definitely be an issue. So there are a few things that we could do that we could be able to help limit, or if not prevent, the conflict between farmers and ranchers and the Thylacoleo. Using a fencing or any efficient physical barrier, whether it's like a perimeter fence around the property or in a certain corral to keep the livestock in for the night, would definitely be a good way to go. While we do not know how high the Thylacoleo could jump, we do know that the Thylacoleo could climb pretty well. With this in mind, the fence should be pretty tall. Until we know how high they jump, we'll go with 10 feet tall for now. And probably best to use either electric wire or a coyote roller, basically a pipe that goes along the top of the fence and rolls anytime something tries to climb over it. So that would make it difficult for the marsupial to be able to climb. Another way to be able to help protect your livestock from the predators is using guardian animals. Around the world, people have used like dogs, llamas, donkeys, and such to be able to protect their livestock from predators, from from like jackals and coyotes to wolves and even some big cats like cheetahs. Now, for in the case of Thylacoleo, llamas would not do well since these guys will overpower them. And donkeys, no way, since we want them to be able to hunt donkeys, so they're not going to be that good. But with this in mind, there are two different livestock guardians that I think would definitely work well for Thylacoleo. Large livestock guardian dog breeds, such as Anatolian Shepherds, would be good for keeping these marsupials away from flocks of sheep and other livestock. To make it more effective, make certain that the number of dogs per flock would be 2 or more. For a single Thylacoleo could easily kill one dog, and having multiple dogs would easily scare it off. Another livestock guardian animal is a surprising one. It is basically another breed of cow. The breed of cow in particular is the San Martinero cattle, a breed of Criollo cattle that is from Latin America, especially in Colombia, that have lived alongside cougars and jaguars for centuries and have developed anti-predator behaviors to these predators. And they're currently being used to keep cattle herds and jaguars safe from conflict. So it would definitely seem to reason that these cows would be great for dealing with Thylacoleo. Another way to be able to help livestock is with the buddy system. Basically, like having different varieties of livestock graze together, such as like larger cattle could help deter Thylacoleos, which might target the smaller sheep. Like I mentioned earlier in this section, providing housing and secure night pens with solid walls and sturdy roofs so Thylacoleo couldn't sneak in will definitely be a good one to help protect your livestock. Especially those who are with calves and lambs should definitely be brought into these facilities at night, every night before dusk. So it's probably most likely that Thylacoleo would hunt are crepuscular or even nocturnal. So there is that. So this is something to take in mind. Habitat modification is also something that could be done as well. Changing the landscape to make it harder for predators to hide and stalk livestock. In this case, keep the bushes and trees to a minimum and grasses short so that the Thylacoleo couldn't be able to hide and stalk livestock. There is one conflict, very interesting and weird conflict that could arise if the Thylacoleo was resurrected in relatively recent times, or at least a few years from now. And that is people actually be worrying about the Thylacoleo actually hunting rhinos. Confused? Well, I'll give you some context. In 2013, a conservation group called the Australian Rhino Project was established and is committed to working as part of the collective international fight to protect African rhinoceros from extinction and preserve them for future generations. Their plan to do so is to have rhinos roam in large fenced-in enclosures in the Australian outback and have their populations grow from there. If this happens and the Thylacoleo were to be released into the bush, these two species might eventually come into contact. On one hand, I can imagine the marsupials being a threat to the rhinos, mostly to their calves, since they might have hunted prey of similar sizes back in the Ice Age, like the Diprotodont. On the other hand, since rhinos have horns and are faster runners than the Diprotodont, they would turn the tides on the Thylacoleo. In this case, steps to keeping the Thylacoleos out of rhino pastures must be done to prevent this collision. there is one conflict that, as I first developed this video, I didn't think about. But as I make this video and I did some research, there is one conflict that I didn't really consider or thought of, and that is actually related to the invasive species that these animals are meant to hunt. As of this day, making this video, the goat market, the meat goat market in Australia has hit boom time, and people are getting rich from goats. And of course, there's also feral cat. There's also cattle, and also thanks to COVID and water buffalo being a cheap alternative to beef, well, the water buffalo industry is starting to make some leeway. And while it's not happening by the time this video is made and published, there's a possibility that camels would also become a good industry for Australia as well. Now, this will definitely bring in a lot of conflicts, like profit or like environmental stuff. So there's going to be a bit of a balancing act here. Breeding the Thylacoleo would probably help to make it more profitable, since since if there's too many of these animals in the wild, that they will not be seen as a profit, and there would be an issue, and especially if the market for these animals crashes or anything like that. So this is definitely something to consider when resurrecting the Thylacoleo for these invasive species that are or could potentially earn a profit. So definitely something to consider. And now, one kind of conflict that everyone is always concerned about, and that would be the potential of the Thylacoleo hunting humans. During the rewilding process, training them or conditioning them to avoid humans is a must, and any Thylacoleo that doesn't pass the human avoidance test must not, and I mean must not, be released into the wild. This conditioning will not just have the individual animals avoid humans, but also they would teach their joeys to avoid humans as well. So most likely, this will definitely be the case for several generations. But there will be situations where attack on humans would happen. Chances of man-eating would be pretty rare and probably only happen as like a freak incident during like times of food scarcity. Hunting livestock to the point that the predators will become comfortable with humans could definitely be a way they can start becoming man-eaters. Sustaining injuries that prevents them from hunting their normal prey could also be able to lead them to hunting livestock and eventually hunting humans. So this is definitely something to consider. When attacks on humans do occur, it would most likely be to like defending themselves, their kills, and or their joeys. Mostly just defensive rather than actually seeking out to attack humans. Whenever someone's in a dangerous situation with Thylacoleo, there are some steps and ways to behave that might be able to help them. As you go through the bush where it's Thylacoleo territory, make sure you make some noise as you go, whether by talking, singing, having bells attached to your waist, anything like that, so that you don't like accidentally surprise the Thylacoleo as you go along. Since like a lot of animals, a Thylacoleo would attack if they get surprised. And it'll be advisable to travel in a group, so that in case of an attack does happen, you'll be in a group to help defend yourselves. And a group is much more intimidating, and there's many eyes keeping a lookout. And it's most likely now, no proof on it yet, but I theorize that the Thylacoleo would most likely be active at dusk, dawn, and maybe even at night as well, where it's cooler. and they're often popular places for large mammalian predators to hunt. So keep this in mind when you're in Thylacoleo territory. And whenever you are facing an aggressive Thylacoleo, and it could be that they're snarling and they probably even rear up on their hind legs, the physiology does show that they would stand up on their hind legs to be able to defend themselves, to be able to probably to hunt and maybe even be able to make themselves look bigger. When facing this scenario, make yourself look bigger, make noise, make certain that you seem as threatening as you can. And while you're doing this, it'll probably be a good idea to maintain eye contact. Now, take this little deal with a grain of salt because eye contact for a lot of animals is a bad thing, but for different reasons. Like, for example, for tigers with other big cats, eye contact means that they pretty much they lost the element of surprise, and the moment you turn your head, that's when the big cat will strike. Like prey animals, like deer and antelope, prolonged eye contact makes them feel spooked and want to get away. For some animals, like gorillas and grizzly bears, prolonged eye contact for them is basically a challenge for them. So, yeah, this will definitely be iffy. So, take that with a grain of salt, but until we learn for certain what prolonged eye contact means to without Leo, that will definitely be something good to do. While these are definitely good for all scenarios, mind that in some cases of kills and joeys involved, this would mean that you would definitely get out of the area once you know what is going on. To do so, beware of your surroundings and walk back very slowly. But while doing this, never ever turn your back on a predator. Turning your back would trigger its hunting instincts and attack. And there is no way you're going to be able to outrun it unless you're literally right by a door. But if you do all that and eventually the Thylacoleo does still attack you, there definitely are some things that you're definitely going to need to do, and you're definitely going to need to fight back. It's uncertain if playing dead is going to work on Thylacoleo. Until we learn that is the case, you're going to have to fight back. One of the ways you can be able to defend yourself is using a bear spray and spray his face. This would deter the animal from attacking you. We also want to make certain that such sprays are available to the locals in or near the release area locations and available to tourists that decide to stroll along those territories as well. Make certain that this is pretty much only used as a last resort and it's meant to be used as a weapon, not as a repellent. Now, if all else fails and you don't have a spray, or for some reason the spray doesn't work and the Thylacoleo attacks you, if you got one with you, get a backpack and use it as a shield. Make sure it's between you and the Thylacoleo. This way, the backpack can shield you from the Thylacoleo's claws and jaws, especially in the vital areas like the neck and the head. And when you're engaged with the Thylacoleo, you're going to have to fight for your life. Use sticks, rocks, pocket knives, anything and everything to pretty much keep the Thylacoleo from biting you, like basically, especially getting around your throat or head or anything like that. Get its eyes, get a stick in its mouth. Do anything and everything you can so that you will get the Thylacoleo to back off and make it realize that it's not going to be an easy meal, and you're a prey animal that's going to fight back. So when you're in that situation, you got to fight for your life. When having the Thylacoleo reintroduced back into the bush, educating and working with the local people is immensely important, such as having them maybe educate and why reintroducing this predator to the ecology is important, teaching and showing people how to coexist with these animals, and even have ecotourism around these marsupials, helping local economies, helping out farmers and ranchers in both protecting their livestock and compensating them for any losses done by the Thylacoleos, must be set up and done. Park rangers would need to be on guard and watch out for rancher retaliation for livestock losses and potential of the hunting of poachers. And also, we gotta make sure we work with the Aboriginal communities so that they could be able to live alongside this animal that their ancestors once did, peacefully. Resurrecting, rewilding, and reintroducing the Thylacoleo would be a valuable action in helping the Australian ecosystem. But if we were able to do that, taking it slow and an immense amount of research and study is needed before to make certain that this will be a good move and not something that's going to come and bite us in the butt. But yet we do not have the genetic material to be able to make this possible yet. But until we have the genetic material that would make this possible, we will just have to imagine what it would be like if a real-life drop bear has returned to the Australian outback. If you made it this far, thank you ever so kindly for watching this video. This is, so far, it's got to be the longest video I've ever made for my channel. It's definitely going to show you how I've been thinking about this particular topic for this video for a long time. I've always wondered about ways to be able to take care of the Australian feral animals ever since I was a kid. When I learned about Thylacoleo, I figured that would probably be a good animal for it. And it pretty much grew on from there. So, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video as much as I have. It was definitely a treat. I want to say a special thanks to artists Keenan Taylor and Rockntooth. Their commission illustrations have really helped flesh out the concept for this video. I thank you for them. And also, thanks to Artbyjrc, I hope I said that right, for giving me permission to borrow one of his illustrations. If you're interested in their work and at least getting commissions from Keenan Taylor and Rockntooth, I will send links to their pages down below. I also want to say a special thank you to YouTube's own Cezary. I'm probably not pronouncing it right. He's helped me out on researching for this topic. I also want to say thank you to my members here on YouTube and my patrons on Patreon. Your support really helps out. If you'd like to be able to support me as a member or as a Patreon, check out my memberships on YouTube, on my YouTube page, or check out my Patreon page, and you can see how you can be able to help out. And if you haven't already, like to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Thank you. Next month's video is going to be on breeding and raising Tyrannosaurus Rex in captivity. And I'm pretty sure you, as well as I, are looking forward to this one. I hope that each and every one of you has a grand day. Adios!